At Fidei.email, we believe in protecting your privacy and supporting your faith. Fidei.email offers peace of mind with features like end-to-end encryption and secure communications tools. Your data stays private and your values remain intact. Choose an email provider that understands what matters to you. Make the switch to Fidei.email today. The Vatican's war on the traditional Mass continues. I doubt there will be any sweeping documents banning the Latin Mass anytime soon. Traditionis Custodes and the accompanying documents that came with it give the Vatican and their lackeys all the tools they need to suppress the Mass. The focus on the suppression of the Mass is ongoing, and it's targeting specifically these days religious orders. Yes, religious orders and missionary groups specifically, because they are typically out of sight of the lay person. For the most part, you will not hear about these stories because it's not at your local parish. It's not your local FSSP. It's not like in Europe where the FSSP are getting kicked out of dioceses for seemingly no reason whatsoever. Now, with religious orders, what ends up happening is they are practically invisible. And so they can be the target of all manner of evil from Rome, and with little recourse, because again, they're invisible. They are so isolated from the rest of the church by design that we don't see them until it's too late, unless, of course, they reach out to the media. So we have an interesting story here today from LifeSite News, who reports that a group called the Missionaries of St. John the Baptist in Covington, Kentucky, have been suppressed by their local bishop. They reported this several days ago, and it was one of those kinds of stories that needed to be waited on for me to report on it for you, because there would be inevitably another shoe to drop, and it did drop. So let's go to the LifeSite story for the article. Headline: Pro-James Martin type Kentucky bishop suppresses Latin Mass religious order citing Traditionis Custodes. Bishop John Iffert of Covington, Kentucky, who said Mass for a pro-James Martin support group last August, has suppressed a religious order which exclusively celebrates the traditional Latin Mass, citing Pope Francis's motu proprio Traditionis Custodes. It's worth noting that this is a James Martin-type bishop. He is any bishop who is overtly pro the James Martin sin, James Martin-type groups, any of that stuff, you would be forgiven for wondering if that bishop was part of that crowd himself. You could be forgiven for wondering that. And in this case, questions can be asked, we'll say. But he crushed a Catholic missionary group who were dedicated to the traditional Mass. And I say Catholic as opposed to this effort to crush the actual faith, because this is synodality, essentially. The synodal religion requires that everything be ecumenical and everything be kind of lukewarm and non-judgmental and all of it. And that isn't the pre-conciliar faith. That doesn't describe Catholicism from before Vatican II, unfortunately for these people. But here we have them crushing a Catholic group, largely out of the public eye. And this is a story that's been brewing for quite a while. And it only came to light recently because, well, of a right of appeal that this group apparently waived. So we are going to the article now. Pray for these priests and pray for the bishop. From the article, quote, "The Bishop of Covington, Kentucky, who had previously celebrated a James Martin-type Mass for a dissident organization, has suppressed a religious order which exclusively celebrates the traditional Latin Mass, citing Pope Francis's TLM suppressing motu proprio Traditionis Custodes. Bishop John Iffert announced to the faithful of his diocese on Tuesday that he had suppressed the Missionaries of St. John the Baptist, a group which, quote, hoped to establish a religious order in the Catholic Church, consisting of 2 priests and several laymen, based at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Park Hills, Kentucky. While the official decree of suppression was issued in July of 2024, Iffert explained that he, quote, delayed publishing the decree because the Missionaries of St. John the Baptist had the right to request that he reconsider it and to appeal the decision before it took effect. It is unclear whether the group appealed the decision. LifeSite News attempted to contact the group but has not heard back as the time of the publishing. In December, LifeSite News reported that Bishop Iffert said Mass for the James Martin-friendly support group named Catholics Embracing All God's Children in August. The organization, which is overseen by the James Martin's sin-affirming Fortunate Families Ministry participated in last year's Cincinnati First Deadly Sin Parade. In his decree of suppression shared with LifeSite News, Iffert said the decision was made in light of the apostolic letter Traditionis Custodes and in response to constant disparagement of the current form of the Roman Rite by members of the association and a lack of suitable clerical leadership for the association. Iffert clarified in his letter to his diocese that the bishops of the organization remain incarnated in the Covington Diocese and, quote, retain all the rights and obligations associated with their vocational state. Christ is King Action Ministries has decried the suppression as a, quote, sudden and unjust disruption of a ministry that has demonstrated unwavering fidelity to the Church. The narrative that these priests have recently adopted a position of irreverence or contempt for the hierarchy falls apart under any serious scrutiny, particularly when examined in light of their relationship with Bishop Emeritus Roger Foys, who expressed profound appreciation for their work from the arrival into the Diocese of Covington in 2011. The lay Catholic group declared in defense of the organization. End quote. They were apparently disparaging the Novus Ordo Mass. The organization is 2 priests and a handful of laity, so I kind of doubt that they were actually disparaging the Novus Ordo. You will be very hard pressed to find a priest who is not SSPX or sedevacantist who disparages the new Mass. You will be very hard pressed to find that. Now, it could be that maybe the laity involved were saying things on social media. That could be the case. Or it could just be the case that they were taking things that podcasters were saying or bloggers were saying and who had also said positive things about this group and then applying it to the group. Guilt by association. Now, the missionaries of St. John the Baptist issued a press release a couple of days after this article was released as a response to the bishop's actions. Here's the press release. Spoiler alert, they've chosen to obey. Here's what they have to say. Quote, the missionaries of St. John the Baptist Incorporated released the following statement concerning the suppression of their standing as a public association of the faithful, effective January 16, 2025, meaning the date it was placed on the internet in the online version of the diocesan newspaper, The Messenger. Honoring our holy founder, Father John Baptiste Rauzan, the missionaries of St. John the Baptist submit to the decree of our bishop, His Excellency John Iffert. In doing so, we embrace the words of Father Rauzan written in our constitutions under the title Our Submission to the Authorities Established by God. Quote, the sovereign pontiff and the church, inseparable from her visible head, are in our eyes a primary authority. Jesus Christ transmits to us through her the way, the truth, and the life. The faith of the Roman Church is unchangeably our faith. Wherever we go, we reverence the bishops, considering them our fathers and our masters. If they disapprove or doubt the efficacy of certain methods used in the missions, we will obey their commands as well as their counsels. This manner of acting seems not only necessary and wiser, but also more fruitful in grace, as happy experience has shown us. For the rest, though certain useful methods must be suppressed, we shall be of good cheer because for us obedience will always be the greatest good. End quote. They agree to be suppressed. Some of you will be fine with that because it is true. As Catholics, under normal circumstances, we are expected to be obedient. But we're not under normal circumstances. There is a crisis in the Church, and has been since well before Vatican II. But really took shape after the Council, when a period of chaos took hold in the Church, when the sacraments were essentially updated for no discernible reason, especially since the Council didn't call for a new form of baptism or a new form of confession or a new form of, not a sacrament, but even the form of exorcism was updated in the 1990s. The Council never called for these things. In fact, we entered a permanent season of revolution. And as a consequence of that, people have left the faith in droves. There is a real crisis in the Church, a real crisis of non-belief, even among regular Mass-attending Catholics. But I also understand why they would choose obedience. There are plenty of saints who speak laudably about obedience even to scoundrelous authorities. Other saints would disagree with that assessment, though. You'll find saints on both sides of that argument. But I'm curious what you think. Do you think they should have resisted? If they had resisted, they would have lost their properties, almost certainly. Or they would have started the standoff between them and the diocese, the way various nuns that I've had to report on in the last 2 years have had to with Rome. They would have entered into that kind of a situation. And given their size, being a very tiny organization, I don't know that they would have been able to resist. But it does look like they are authentically submitting to, in obedience to the decree. That they believe, not just because it's the only option they have, but they believe that that is the only moral option, only ethical option they can take. So I'm curious what you think about this. Do you think they should resist? Do you think that they're stuck between a rock and a hard place? Or do you think that this submission is the authentic thing that at least they in their situation should do? Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. And if you've ever thought about supporting the work of Return to Tradition, there are just options in the description box below: Patreon, Subscribestar, the YouTube join button, and a few other things, all of which have been asked for by people who wanted to support the work here. Your support does help keep these daily messages coming and is greatly appreciated. Please pray for everybody we spoke about today, the bishops involved in this story, as well as the priests and the lay people, and as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.